Charles Jones. I'm Technical Conservation Skills Programme Manager, and I trained as a stonemason some 20 years ago now with Historic Environment Scotland. Stonemasonry is an ancient craft of being able to work with stone. I suppose today it's a craft skill that involves designing, quarrying, working with stone, dressing stone, building stone and embellishing stone to some degree, so it's wide ranging in today's modern construction industry. I excelled at craft studies at school. I was good at graphic communication, art. It was a real passion of mine. I got a work experience placement with an architect's practice up in Angus. It was a historic site, and when I started there on my work placement, I was just blown away by not just the work that he does, but the site and environment in which he works in. And he actually had a stonemason working on his estate, and I got some part-time work with him. And just by chance, Historic Environment Scotland then advertised for an apprentice. So I thought it's a unique opportunity and I'm going to grab it. The work that I did at the White House wasn't that dissimilar to what my predecessors did in the 18th century. You know, the actual skill that was involved was exactly the same. You know, the tools and techniques that were used were very similar. I was only there for a very short period of time, whereas those stonemasons were there for a number of years working on the complete construction of. Whereas I just played a small part in the reproduction of the historic rows on the White House. The techniques aren't that much different. This crocket is over 100 years old, and they've used drills to get into some of the areas that are very difficult to get a chisel into. And you know, even then they were using what are seen as power tools to us today. They were using new techniques and advances in the way of producing stone in order to get the desired effect. The stonemasons that travelled to the White House, I'm sure, and you know, the same questions were running through my head. What is the stone going to be like? You know, your experience is only ever of the stones that you've worked in the past. So I'm sure the Edinburgh stonemasons would have been thinking, you know, I hope it's quite similar to some of the stones that I've worked in the past. I've worked with some stones that are very hard and difficult to work, and they take a long time to produce the desired finish or the element that you're working on. Whereas the same questions would have been running through the Edinburgh masons' heads before they got there. And to their surprise and presumed delight, because it certainly was for me, you know, the stone was very similar to the sandstones that I'd worked here in Scotland in the past. So, you know, it was a bit of a relief when I arrived there. I seen the stone and I got to work with it for the first time. It was quite a surreal experience, to be honest. You know, it was you know, such an iconic and historic building. But you know, as soon as I got there, all the security that you would expect to get into the site, you know, I had to go through that. Once you got past all that and into the site itself, it seemed like a really nice environment to be working in. There's a team of stonemasons and operatives that work in there, and they were all really nice people to work with. They'd done everything they could to help me out. And once you're in the door, and you know, I did have a job to do, so once you get your head down and get on with it, you just need to crack on with the job. We're at an interesting time in construction. You know, the past 50 years or so, there's been a huge push for, you know, mainstream construction, focusing on new build, and they've always driven the qualifications in stonemasonry. Although the last 10 years or so, Historic Environment Scotland and others have done a huge amount of work in trying to incorporate repair elements to the stonemasonry qualification in Scotland. We need more apprentices and we need more stonemasons. Supply isn't meeting demand, so it's about engaging with employers and industry nationwide and let them know about the benefits of taking on an apprentice and how easy it can be, and also the benefits of having an apprentice in the workforce, them coming through and keeping on the craft of stonemasonry alive. You know, it's the employer that takes you on as an apprentice, and then it's the employer that sends you to college to do your training. You know, there's 4 centres delivering stonemasonry in Scotland: Glasgow, Edinburgh, Stirling and Elgin. All 4 facilities are amazing facilities, and they're all producing really good work. It's about being persistent, you know, engaging with employers, go knocking on doors, and it's about letting people know that that's what you want to do. There's a great career to be had in stonemasonry.